All right, so for the people who are here, thank you so much for coming. Just make sure to fill out this bit.ly link and, or you can use the QR code just to register. Let us know you're here. I'm gonna leave it up for like another minute. And then we can just get started. All right, also, if you want to at any point, you can just text or DM one of us privately on the Zoom chat and we can send you the link to register. So this is just a segment, just to like explain it really quickly. This is just a segment we do every week at our meetings where we choose to highlight someone in tech that isn't necessarily highlighted a lot. So Vincent's going to take this one away.
Cool. So, I mean, the slide isn't showing for me, so.
Oh, oops, sorry, I was paused.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
All right. So this week we're highlighting Scott Hanselman. He's a diversity advocate and Microsoft engineer. I think personally that he really embodies what it means to be like an advocate and using his own privilege to help people all over tech, whether that be Black, Indigenous, people of color, as well as LGBT and people with disabilities. He has a podcast which has tons of diverse voices, and just hearing like the broad spectrum of people in the tech industry. And he also has a YouTube channel where he like has a series called "Stuff They Didn't Teach You in School" about tech. And he's also an author and a former professor as well.
That's really cool. Thank you, Vincent.
Yeah, so now Emily's here from Intuit, and we're going to be doing a little like resume building event and like interview prep. So yeah, can we let Emily share her screen? Oh, cool.
Yep, I have stopped sharing.
All right, let me see if I'm going to be able.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay, I feel like I'm archaic every single time I need to share my screen. I consistently mess it up. Awesome. Well, I'll quickly start off just by introducing myself. So my name is Emily Durham. I'm one of Intuit's senior recruiters, and I manage all of our Canadian campus recruitment as well as our co-op programs in the US. With that being said, though, I partner really closely with all of our teams who manage our intern, full-time hires, all that good stuff. So any questions you might have specific to recruitment, totally here to help. But really, you know, what the purpose of today's session is just to help you get your dream job. So there were a whole lot of things that I really sucked at before I was a recruiter. Resumes was one of them. My LinkedIn was god awful. My interview skills, it was all bad. None of it was good. So really what I like to do as part of these sessions is take all of the things that 20-year-old Emily sucked at and tell you what recruiter old gray hair Emily learned. And really the purpose is to give you just the fast facts of what recruiters actually look for, how to rewrite your resume, how to ask those, or rather answer those difficult questions as part of those interviews that you're having, and giving you just practical tips. I'm a very direct recruiter. I won't give you fluff. I'll tell you, how you need to answer certain questions, how you should write those emails, how to write your LinkedIn. So if you do have any questions, it's totally a safe space to ask those. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off with the resume portion, spend a little bit of time on LinkedIn, because that's another huge one, and then spend a bit of time on the interview prep. So what we're going to do is every few slides, I'll pause in case there are questions, and then we'll kind of keep it rolling. But do we have any questions, comments, or concerns before we jump into the good stuff? Awesome, let's do it. So I'll do just kind of a quick intro of us, what we do. I intended to introduce myself here, but I clearly beat myself to the punch. But Intuit is QuickBooks, TurboTax, and Mint. And our mission is really to power prosperity worldwide. And for us, what that means, of course, is giving our customers financial freedom. But it also enables me to do cool stuff like this and just share, resume and career prep materials. So really powering, or empowering rather folks to live their best lives, so to speak, whether that's financially or from a careers perspective. So what I love to start off with before we jump in is myths. So these are the things that I thought. These are things I hear students think, and they're wrong. These are not things. Some of them, we'll have some trick answers. So we'll kind of go through, ask some questions, level set, and then dive into the nitty gritty of what some of these answers were. So the first kind of misconception is that all companies use bots to scan their resumes. This is not true. This is not a thing as much as people think it is. I've seen candidates literally put buzzwords in behind their resume in white text so that resume bots will pick up on it and will move them through in the process. First of all, that's not how resume bots work. Second of all, companies aren't using these bots as much as you think they are. They're maybe scanning out location, or if you've indicated, that you can only work for this amount of time, they might, pop you out of the process at that point. But these bots are not being used at the volume that candidates think they are. And that's really significant because that means that recruiters are manually reading all of your resumes. So you need to make sure that you're making your resume really user-friendly and quick to digest as your recruiter goes in to actually break it down and see if you're the right candidate for the role. This is the next misconception, is that recruiters read resumes. No, we don't read. Recruiters are lazy people. My people are lazy. We scan resumes. You will never catch us reading a full sentence. What you will catch us doing is scanning your resume, writing down a couple of the things that stick out, and moving right along. So it's critical that you write your resume in a way that actually enables the recruiter to pick out those fast facts quickly, because I promise they are not reading your resume. So this is my all-time favorite question, and feel free to kind of unmute yourself or pop it in the chat if you think you know the answer. But how long do you think recruiters look at your resume for on average? And I promise I didn't make this number up. This is a real statistic.
I feel like it was like 15 seconds.
15? Okay, I'm getting a couple guesses for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 3 seconds. It's 6 seconds. And honestly, seasoned recruiters probably take 4 seconds. 6 is even a little bit aggressive. And this sounds terrifying, but it's not. Again, it's really just to reinforce that if you structure your resume properly, you will pack a punch in those 6 seconds, no questions asked. The next misconception is, do recruiters actually check your social media? Yeah. We do. We check your social media almost every time, but I'm not creeping you on Instagram. I'm not checking your Twitter. I'm probably going to do a quick Google search of you and probably a LinkedIn search. And I would say those are the two kind of things that are the most significant. So I always get people ask, if they should delete those really embarrassing like peace sign Facebook photos from 2006. I'm not going that deep. I'm doing a quick Google search, kind of taking a peek at what your online presence looks like and really focusing on your LinkedIn as that primary source of how I interact with you online.
I have a quick question about that.
Yeah.
Do you think most recruiters at least do like the Google search and like quick online presence check?
I would say 99% of the time they are. Maybe not right at the point of you applying, but definitely before they issue any offers, they'll do a quick search. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to get right into the resume piece, and stop me if you have any questions. Again, totally a safe space. You can be super candid. So really my whole mantra with resumes, a lot of recruiters are going to try and tell you how to get the perfect resume, or how to get the absolute most ideal piece of paper that represents who you are as a person. I personally believe that so long as your resume isn't bad, that's a good resume. If it is not bad, you are killing it. The reason for that is every recruiter and every hiring manager is going to have a different preference. I'm going to like things that other recruiters might not like, that other hiring managers might not like. So long as your resume follows these kind of core principles, you will be universally accepted and universally reviewed. So again, don't worry about making the perfect resume. So long as it doesn't suck, you are going to be just fine. So here's how we avoid having a bad resume. The first piece is design. So what does your resume actually look like? And we'll get into a little bit more detail in terms of the specifics of what works and what doesn't in a second. The next is data, and we'll talk more about that as well. And then the details. So when we think about the design side of things, what makes a resume bad? The first is that it's over-designed. I'm talking those crazy templates that you found on Canva, or those crazy, Etsy templates you bought for $7.99 on Black Friday. I'm talking like the crazy graphics, the, yellow font, Comic Sans, all of that. Keep it simple. It's great to have a nice kind of visual appeal to your resume, but make sure that it's really streamlined. I would say when it comes to your resume, less is more. And the reason for that is if your recruiter has 6 seconds, they are not spending any of those seconds trying to figure out where your graduation date is on your resume. You want to keep it simple. The next is that it's too long. Your resume, no matter what, should only be 1 page long. The only exception is if you are like a senior executive. For example, my resume is still 100% going to be 1 page. Or if you have a significant amount of research or papers that you contributed to, like if you're a PhD student, that's where you could kind of have that secondary page. The third piece is spelling errors, and I know this sounds extremely obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I've had spelling errors pop up on resumes, and not so much that it's recruiters who care, but the hiring managers will care a lot. If your future boss sees typos on your application, they're going to assume that you don't have attention to detail, even if that's not true. So make sure that you're double checking every single kind of detail on your resume. We'll kind of get into this in a little bit as well, but I do want to call out some things that you should always have on your resume. You should always have your graduation date, especially, up until the point where you get your first full-time job. The reason for that is for internship programs, co-op programs, or full-time new graduate programs, when you graduate actually impacts if you're eligible for those roles. So some recruiters, yes, will hunt you down and ask for that information, but if they have 3,000 applicants, they might not have the time to do that. So make sure that you have that kind of written on your resume no matter what. Always have your email. I know that's a no-brainer, but always have your email, your phone number, and I always opt to remove your address. Don't put your actual home address on your resume. My opinion on that is, especially in this remote world, you don't want to be pigeonholed to one state or to one country for a role. And oftentimes most companies, if they don't know where you reside, they might say, oh, well, maybe they're open to relocating to California, and they might be open to that. So I would say omit your address unless you're dead set on staying in that particular area. Awesome. So these are some kind of additional examples from a visual perspective of what a not so great resume might look like. We're starting with the red resume. I call this like the flaming hot Cheeto resume. This resume is a sin. This is criminal. This is not allowed. Your resume should never have a background color, period. It should be a white background color. If you're gonna get kind of funky with your colors, put it in the text, put it in sidebars, make sure that the background is still white. A lot of people, believe it or not, still print resumes. So when you're printing with color, you stand a chance of distorting the font and all of that good stuff. Honestly, the format outside of it being flaming hot Cheeto red, it's not that bad. Like the format is not visually appealing, but it's a perfectly fine resume. But it's those color choices that really throw you off. So on the other side, if you do want to have a little bit of fun with your design, this is a really great simple example of what a decent resume might look like. So this is Jane Rowe's resume. I just pulled it off of Google. This is a really, really simple example. You definitely could have a little bit more fun with what you're talking about, with the colors that you're, kind of looking at, with the format itself. But this is a really great, simple and staple kind of resume that you could build off of for any industry. Are you guys familiar with Canva, C-A-N-V-A, as a website? Okay, I'm seeing some nods and seeing some no's. So Canva is an online kind of template generator. They have everything from resumes, like, LinkedIn backgrounds, but they also do amazing school presentations. Side note, like they're outstanding. I think that Canva has some of the best resume templates in the market. They're free, they're so easy to use. So if you're struggling with what kind of a format to go for, check out Canva. It's a godsend. It's an awesome, awesome resource. So definitely take a look at that. Okay, here are some bad designs. And I know, don't hate me. These don't look that bad. These are kind of funky. There's like a little color, a little circle happening. But let me tell you why these are horrible. These are horrible because if your recruiter has 6 seconds to look at them, I already have a headache. I have no idea what our friend Mateo does. I promise I pulled these off Google. These aren't real people. But I have, no idea what this person does for work. I'm struggling to kind of get actual descriptions of the work that they've done. Yes, there's a lot of like visual appeal, but there's not a whole lot of content. And that's the problem. I want to be able to skim and really see what you've done in terms of work. And then our friend Harrison, although this is like visually stunning, that text is so small. There's no way. There's no way these eyes are reading that. So you can have a resume that, yes, looks good, but is not functional at all. It's like shoes, it's like outfits, it's like any of that. It needs to be comfortable, and these resumes just aren't comfortable to review. So always keep that in mind when you're designing them. Simple is a good thing. Okay, so here are a couple more examples. I won't get into too much more detail. I know these are extremely simple. I'm kind of giving like the most extreme end of simple when it comes to the formats. You can definitely jazz these up a little bit, but these are some resumes that are kind of okay. Nothing wrong with them. You definitely could have more fun. These are safe. You are never going to be screened out because of templates like this. Here's what great might look like. In my mind, these are my favorite style of resume formats. They're simple, they're clean, but you break things up a little bit. You really are able to kind of quickly scan, pull out some information, and I'm not overwhelmed with the amount of text that I'm looking at. So these are just some quick examples that I would always recommend checking out. Again, all pulled from Google. These are not real people. And then Techspecific. So those are kind of great resumes for any industry. When I think of tech specifically, you have a lot more opportunity to be creative. So these are a couple resume templates that I think are awesome. Very similar to what we saw on the last page, just with a little bit more color and a little bit more visual appeal. So in the world of tech, regardless of what you do have more kind of wiggle room to be creative. Okay, I'm gonna pause there before I get into data. Do you have any questions on what resumes should and shouldn't look like? Awesome. I take silence as things are fine, so we'll keep it moving, but if more questions pop up, you just let me know. Awesome. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is data. This is so important, like so important, and it's something I never put on my resume, and now I look back at what my university resume was when I was applying for internships, and now I understand why nobody hired me. Data on your resume is absolutely critical. And when I say data, I'm not necessarily talking about, I did 10,000 tax returns, or I wrote 600,000 lines of this. It's not about necessarily quantifying every little thing you did. It's quantifying the important stuff. So what was the volume of work that you did? What were the outcomes, and how many clients did you support? And it's important to actually type out these numbers. So don't spell things out like, don't spell 1, don't spell 21. I actually want to see the number. And the reason for that is as your recruiter is scanning your resume, it is so much easier for them to scan, quickly look at that number, and then they'll read that sentence. Always remember, recruiters are looking for the easy way to review your resume, so the more you can break it up, the better it is for us. So here's an example of how you can add numbers. So this was actually pulled from that university resume I was talking about. Literally, this was my, I think, 4th year resume. So I had said that I supported the recruitment process for the co-op program. But when I went to apply for jobs, after I realized data was kind of important, this is how I updated it. So I wrote, supported 10 recruiters with interview scheduling, offer letters, and events planning for a 600-person co-op program. So you've got the size of the program in there, how many people I supported, and actual details in terms of what I did. The biggest mistake I see on resumes is people will say what their teams did, not what they did. I need to know specifically what you did. So if you worked on a team that, I don't know, made great sandwiches, what was your role? Were you lettuce? Were you tomato? Were you cashing people out? That's a very basic example, but I need to know specifically what your contributions were. So that's a huge call out in terms of the details and the data that you will throw into your resume. Okay, so really here's the secret recipe for a good kind of resume. Of course, you're gonna need your name, absolutely. Make sure it's bold, easy to read, all of your important links. So if you're a designer, that needs to be your portfolio. LinkedIn's a great one you can throw in as well. Your GitHub, all of that good stuff. Your education, that's of course really important with your graduation date as part of that. So that's critical for your grad date to be on there. The next is your professional experience. And when I say professional experience, all experience is professional experience. Anything you were paid for counts. I don't care if that's part-time work at the mall. I don't care if that's being a TA. That is all really great and legitimate work experience. And all experience is good experience. So that's kind of what you would put there. Followed by your volunteer and kind of open source projects. So if you're, a computer science student, if you're into the world of CS engineering, what have you been contributing to, or what have you been volunteering with? What clubs or committees do you support? And then at the bottom is additional information. So when I talk about the secret recipe, this is kind of 2 parts. The first part is all of this stuff has to be on your resume. But this is also a great slide to screenshot if you do need to, and I know this is being recorded, but you should literally have your resume written in this order. So you start with your name, links, education, professional experience, volunteer, additional information. That is the perfect way to structure your resume. When I say additional information, a lot of students are like, there's nothing additional to me. I go to school, I sleep, that's it. That's fine. There's not a lot additional to me outside of work too, but you always will have a hobby or little things that you're passionate about. So at the bottom, I always recommend having something literally titled additional info, and you would write your technical skills. Maybe you list out all of your programming languages that you know. Maybe you're bilingual. That's a great place to say, you know, additional skills, fluent in French and English. Or you can also say interests. On my resume, I have like a personal interest summary where I'm like, I love Netflix, podcasts, and baking banana bread. It's little things that kind of humanize you, and it gives your recruiter something to talk about. At the end of your interview, if I'm scanning your resume and I see you love rock climbing, I might say, oh my gosh, what made you get into rock climbing? And it's just one more way you can really connect with the person who you're speaking to. So I always recommend having a couple personal elements as part of your resume as well. It doesn't need to be business all the time. It's like a mullet. Business in the front, party in the back. That's really how I describe your resume. Awesome. So I can actually pause there on the resume quick tips. I know we zoomed through that because it's so much content, but do you have any general questions about resumes, things that work, things that don't work, or anything I can do to help from a resume front?
Yeah, I have a quick question about like resumes and like how you kind of look people up. Do you look people up after like every resume you see, or do you only look up like specific people on like LinkedIn or on Google?
That's a good question. Honestly, I would say definitely it's not every person, or I would not be able to sleep. Usually I do it at the point of interview. So after I've got my final candidates for interviews, and mostly it's a curiosity thing because sometimes I'll see like additional things that you've contributed to, you know, that you haven't listed on your resume. I often see a lot of awards students win via Google that didn't fit on their resume. So recruiters are never really looking for bad things. Honestly, when I Google search, I end up finding more good things about the candidates. And I'm like, oh, sweet, they also did this in 2011. So usually for me, it's at the point of after your last interview or right before your last interview, I kind of just do a quick search and just see kind of what else there is about you. Because I've even had some students who have like full YouTube channels, like so many cool side hustles that they don't put on their resume that's all over the internet that totally is a selling feature for them.
Oh, nice. And I know some people have like really common names. Do you think it's like a bad sign or something that like someone's not on the internet? I know when you look up my name, you see like the brand Chloe, and like that's the first thing that shows up.
No, that's such a good question. If it makes you feel better, when you Google my name, there is someone who won American Ninja Warrior named Emily Durham. And trust me when I say she's occupying like the first 10 pages, she's way cooler than me. It's totally to be expected. Your recruiter will likely, if they don't see anything on a quick Google search, they'll probably just head to your LinkedIn, do one last scan and call it a day. But it's completely acceptable. I am also a victim of a very common name, so I totally get it.
Nice, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Someone in the chat said, so what's a good way to prioritize what to add and what not to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say really tailor that to the job that you're applying to. So I definitely am not one of the recruiters out there who thinks you need a different resume for every job you apply to. I think that's a lot of extra work for no reason. I would say make sure that your resume is actually tailored to the industry. So for example, you're applying for a software engineering internship. I would take off work experience that doesn't fit that. Like if you've got, I know for me, I have so much experience in marketing that's not what I do anymore. So I take that off of my resume to make a little bit of space. So I would take things off that don't kind of align directly to the industry you're trying to get into. Another area where I see students take up a lot of space, actually two areas I see students take up a lot of space, is they'll list out some of the courses that they've taken in university. You don't need to do that. Usually when you apply, we'll ask for a transcript, or most recruiters will generally know what classes you would have taken at this point in your academic career. So you can free up that space, or look at your formatting. I find a lot of students sometimes will leave a lot of like white space at the top underneath their name, and you can really just push those things up. But I would say take out anything that isn't relevant to the role that you're applying to, and make sure that you have, I would say, 3 to 4 bullet points at most describing each of your work experiences. So if you follow that kind of model, in theory, you should be okay. Oh, awesome. I saw another question in the chat. For analyst positions, is it a good idea to have your personal website? Is it also important to publish a resume in LinkedIn? Oh, such a good question. I would say, to be completely honest, a lot of recruiters will say, yes, put your resume on LinkedIn. I personally don't think it matters. If your LinkedIn is put together how I'm about to show you, you're not going to need your resume on LinkedIn because it's basically going to be the same thing. So I wouldn't worry about that. And in terms of a personal website, it's always a good idea to have a personal website, regardless of your industry. If you have, an accumulation of work that you want to highlight that doesn't necessarily fit on your LinkedIn page, I think go for it. And that's such a great way to really set your skills apart. Awesome. Another question is, for a student resume, is it recommended to stay away from things from high school? Okay, I kind of have like two opinions on this. There is a definite point where it's time to part ways. Like it is time, we're leaving it in the past. I would say that point for me, second year. Once you're in second year, it's time. We have to go. We have to let go of high school. Up until second year, I know you're still kind of building up what clubs you're working on, what kind of internships or part-time jobs you've had. You're still kind of building up your portfolio. I would say after second year, it's time. We have to part ways. It's time to let high school go. That was very upsetting for me because I feel like I peaked in high school. So having to release all of that was very, very disappointing.
I think Brandon had a question too.
Oh, awesome.
He's sending it in the chat.
Yeah, I just typed it.
Okay, cool.
I was just wondering if you have a GitHub or personal website link, and you also have personal projects that you want to highlight. Should you avoid putting them on the resume under open source stuff and just let them be found through the links instead?
Such a good question. I think call them out always. So under your kind of open source, and I'll go back to kind of the secret recipe slide, under your volunteer and open source, if you're a developer, put your proud projects under there too. So you can list them out and send direct links. So let's say, for you, for example, you would say member of multi, as well as your next kind of point would be, I don't know, a web scraper app that you put together with one sentence describing what it is and a link to that on your GitHub. Because then your recruiter has no choice but to check it out. Awesome. Another question is it safe to hyperlink our resumes / projects links on the actual resume? Or sorry, to save hyperlink. Can you tell I need my glasses? We were talking about bad eyesight. Hello. I'm about to get so close. Awesome. Okay, so is the question, I guess, to kind of hyperlink on your resume? Yeah, go for it. Hyperlink everything. Most applicant tracking systems support that. So hyperlink away, you should be more than good. Awesome. Another question is it more important to include more recent projects and work experience or more relevant? Oh, that's such a good question. I would say, honestly, you're going to hate me for this answer. It really depends. For example, if your most recent work experience is your part-time job at school, still definitely have that because that shows that you are engaged and that you're able to balance many things, because it's no joke to be in school full-time and working. I would just say be mindful of how much space that takes up. So if you have some things that are more recent that you want to keep on your resume, instead of letting that take up 3 bullet points, maybe it's just 1 sentence. I would personally say you do need a healthy mix of both to prove that you're still active in terms of working and juggling different projects. But don't eliminate everything that isn't perfectly aligned. Just reduce how much space you allow it to take up. Awesome. Let me see if we've got another question. It was, would you recommend including part-time jobs even if they aren't industry relevant? If it fits, yes. It's a really great way to show your work ethic. And also, like I said, it's no joke to juggle work and school. So any recruiter who reads that is going to be able to appreciate that you hustle. So put it on there if it fits, even if you only give it 1 sentence to describe it. I worked part-time at the Gap in university, and I literally wrote 1 sentence that was helping customers folding jeans. Bye. You don't need to kind of go crazy with that stuff. So just keep it simple, to the point, and make lots of room for the kind of industry-specific work that you've done. Awesome. Okay, we're going to quickly head over into LinkedIn. Arguably, this is my all-time favorite part, but I'll keep taking questions about resumes and all of that good stuff as well as we go. So my philosophy with resumes was, so long as your resume isn't bad, it's good. My philosophy with LinkedIn is if, oh goodness, is this slide going to work? Is if Shaquille O'Neal needs a LinkedIn, you need a good LinkedIn, and that's a fact. If Shaq wakes up and feels that he needs a publicist to actively manage his LinkedIn profile, I promise you, all of us need LinkedIn. So really what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what the ideal LinkedIn profile looks like based on how amazing Shax is. His publicist that runs this for him, it's a 12 out of 10. Like, this is the perfect LinkedIn profile. We're literally going to go through and break down what you should have on your LinkedIn search and on your LinkedIn profile. So what I do want to talk about first before we actually break down Shax's profile is how recruiters find you on LinkedIn. So when recruiters are actively searching on LinkedIn for candidates, it's not just for full-time roles, it's also for intern and co-op positions. And there's specific things that I'm going to call out that actually will inhibit you or put you on the top of the page when recruiters are searching for you. So there's certain things I'll call out that are absolutely critical. Other stuff is just nice to have. The nice to have is a nice banner. Is it going to be the end of the world if you don't have like a great TSN banner? No, you're going to be just fine. Canva is an awesome resource for beautifully designed backgrounds and LinkedIn profile headers. If you want to kind of have something custom, maybe you have, I don't know, like a saying that you use to describe yourself. Like maybe it's finding creative solutions to complex problems. Maybe you throw that in there and you create that with your Canva profile. That kind of creates this amazing brand next to your name. A strong profile picture is really nice to have as well. I'm of the belief that it's 2020. That can be a selfie. Like if that is a selfie, I think that is more than appropriate, especially in the world of tech. One of the things that's really important is a catchy headline. So it's not enough just to say current student. If you look at Shax, it's business mogul, former athlete, purveyor of fun. That is so cool. Your recruiter wants to see that you're passionate about what you do and that there's more to you than just being in school. So maybe your title is passionate student, eager learner, innovator. Cool. Even that sounds better than just student. So make sure you've got a bit of a headline in there as well. The next piece is an about section. This is important. When your recruiter is doing a search for you on LinkedIn, the very first thing I look at is your about section. For two things. I'm looking at that you actually put the effort in to put it together and that there's a summary that explains a little bit more about you as a candidate. I'm also looking for what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a summer 2021 internship, make sure that's in there. If you're looking for, I don't know, like a full-time role starting February 2021, I want that in there. So that's really, really important to keep on this part of your LinkedIn profile. And then, of course, important work experience with accurate descriptions. The easiest hack to do this is literally copy and paste your resume. That's it. You don't need anything new. Just copy what you've got in there, put it in there. I promise your recruiter's not going to notice. And even if they do, it's completely fine. I have that. So copy and paste it from your resume. Don't create more work for yourself. The next is your academic experience, like your school and your online courses. Literally anything that you've done to learn, put it on there. If that's a Udemy course, if that's LinkedIn Learning, if that's, I don't know, some hackathon workshop that you've done, put it all in there. Every single thing you've done, make sure it's there. And like I said, the most important thing you can do is have your graduation date. Because when I'm a recruiter searching, the first filter that I have available to me other than what you're studying is when you graduate. So if you don't have your graduation date in there, it's not that you're going to come up at the bottom, you're not coming up at all. So you need to make sure that your graduation date is in there and is super clear. And then is volunteer experience. This is where I think you have a lot more room to display kind of your passion beyond just your resume. So on your resume, you've got one page of real estate. You might have omitted some of your high school work. You might have omitted, some soccer coaching that you did or dance classes that you taught. This is where you can put that in there. This is where you get that additional information. I literally still have my high school volunteer experience on there. Is it because I'm too lazy to delete it? Yes, probably, but it's still there. So it's completely fine for you to have kind of older work on here. That's the purpose of your LinkedIn. It's more of an archive of your experience. Now, the skills, and I love that I'm not clicking along as I'm doing this. The skills and endorsements, if you pay attention to anything I've just said, make it this. Ignore everything else if you have to. Skills and endorsements are critical for you to be found on LinkedIn. When recruiters are looking up skills, they literally will type in what they want. It might be JavaScript, it might be public speaking, whatever they're looking for that role. If you have that on your profile and have enough of those skills on your profile matching their search, you are going to be on page number 1. And on average, when I'm looking for, let's say, internship candidates, I at least have 2,000 candidates come up for every single search. So if you can be on page 1 or 2, that is ideal state. Some of the technical things that I would pop on there are all of the programming languages that you know. Are you a good public speaker? Are you, a collaborative team player? Add those buzzwords in there. This is where the buzzwords actually count. So definitely make sure that you've got that in there. I also get people asking quite a bit on if endorsements matter. You're going to hate me. I don't think they do. They're nice. It's fine. I don't have any endorsements on LinkedIn, and I think I'm okay on LinkedIn. So like, you're going to be fine. If you have people who are willing to endorse you, that's amazing. It's nice to have. If I look at your LinkedIn and you don't have endorsements, trust me, I'm not going to care. I care more so about the content of what's on your LinkedIn page versus, you know, someone writing a nice post about you on your LinkedIn. Again, it's really nice to have. If you have it, amazing. If not, you're going to be totally fine. There is no need to kind of lose any sleep over not having those endorsements. Awesome. So I'm going to pause there just to do a quick check on the chat. So someone had asked, what do you think the top 3 skills we should have are? More hard skills, more soft skills? That's a really great question. I would say it's very rare for me to look up teamwork or kind of collaboration, mostly because I do focus on tech. So I would say in any industry, make sure that your technical skills are on there. So if you're actually, you know, a programmer or a coder, make sure all of your languages are there. In HR, I even have like technical HR terms in there, like employment law, things like that. So make sure that you're getting as specific as you can. You can also include those soft skills. They are nice to have. They're just not going to help you quite as much, to be honest. But that's a great question. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to pause there because that was a whole lot of LinkedIn. I literally just walked you through Shaquille O'Neal for a little bit. Any questions on LinkedIn, how it works, what recruiters see, or anything I can do to help before we get into interviews?
Does how recent your picture is matter on like the profile picture you have on LinkedIn?
I hope not, because mine's really old. I've actually had a candidate say to me, they're like, you look nothing like your LinkedIn profile. And I was like, okay, thank you. It doesn't matter, to be honest. So long as it's a professional photo, it's fine. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like, it's nice to do a refresh every 3 or 4 years, but honestly, mine, I think, is over 4 years old and I haven't changed it. So as long as you've got something there, you're fine.
Thank you.
No, of course. Awesome. How important is the amount of connections? That's a really good question. Honestly, not important at all. I'm more so looking at LinkedIn to see if there's anything additional about your experience that wasn't on your resume that I would like to see. I really don't care how many people you've connected with. It's nice to see if you're active online, but I'm not going to lose sleep if you have 10 connections. We know you're busy, so that makes total sense. Someone had asked, is LinkedIn the same as the resume where we should stay away from high school experience? I would say LinkedIn, you can put your high school experience because it's more of an archive. Your recruiter is there because they have slated out time to actually look at your profile versus the resume is like mad dash to move through them. So I would say you're totally safe to put high school on your LinkedIn. How good / familiar do you have to be with a coding language to put it on your resume? I would say even if you're at a beginner level, still put it on there. That's on the recruiter to reach out and clarify what your proficiency is on that. On your resume, let's say you've just started with Python. If you've just started with Python, put in brackets beginner on your resume. On your LinkedIn, you don't have that option. So I would say still put it on there. And when you connect with your recruiter, they'll probably ask you. And if you don't, you can completely say, you know, I've actually just started learning this, but you know, I'm already proficient in XYZ. So that's a great question. How important is it to post about milestones and interact on the LinkedIn feed? Such a good question. I think everyone is going to have a different answer. Okay, my recruiter answer is it's always nice to see that you are involved. I would say do whatever feels organic for you. For some people, posting on social media just isn't a thing. They don't enjoy it. It doesn't bring them joy. It's not something they're comfortable doing. I would say honor whatever feels good to you. And if a company is ever going to, you know, not consider you as a candidate because you don't post a lot on LinkedIn, that's not a company you want to work for. So I would say be true to yourself. Super cheesy advice. I would say for me, I love posting on LinkedIn. That's part of my job, but I have colleagues who don't enjoy it as much. So I would say do whatever makes you feel comfortable and feels organic for you. And if a company can't appreciate that, you deserve better than that company, to be honest. That's a great question. The next one is, are there any specific things you would recommend avoid putting on your LinkedIn? Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, I would say the only thing that I would say avoid interacting with is, you know, those like the very unprofessional posts that go around on LinkedIn where it's like, is this like someone's aunt's Facebook page, where that's like circulating on LinkedIn. I would say just be mindful not to interact with anything that veers too far away that from a professionalism stance. Other than that, there's nothing I would say that is off limits. If there's a cool essay you've written that you're able to share, post it. If there is like a cool event that you've been to that you want to interact with, do it. I think it's totally fair game so long as it's professional and in the space of what you're looking at. And please tell me I'm not the only person who's seen those like very strange LinkedIn posts that go viral where I'm like, is this Facebook? I don't understand. Very strange. Okay, so I am going to move into quick interview tips. I'm just going to see, I should be able to share my computer sound. So when I give kind of like interview prep advice, I really have 3 things that are important to prep for. It's literally a checklist. The first is know yourself, and yes, that is a Drake reference. Shout out to Canada. You really, in advance of an interview, you need to spend time preparing answers about yourself. So when you're asked questions, you know, tell me about a time where you faced a struggle. How did you overcome it? Tell me about a time where you worked on a team. Those are the things you actually need to prepare for. Do not rely on yourself to wing it. Trust me, I still can't wing it, and I'm a recruiter. It's really important that you take the time to prepare those style of answers based on the questions you think you're going to be asked. The other thing that's really important, and it is so critical, is when the recruiter says, tell me a little bit about yourself, it is not good enough to give like a 2-sentence answer that's, hey, I'm Emily and I'm a recruiter, and then awkward silence. Or it all started in 2006 when my goldfish died and I knew I had to be a recruiter. Too much information is not good, and too little information is also not good. So I do love to give kind of an example of what is not great. I was having issues with my firewall today, so I might not be able, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this clip. Let me see. I'm not going to be able to. I'll describe it to you, but it won't be as funny. If anyone here is a fan of The Office, there's a scene where Dwight is doing interviews, and he's asked to describe himself, and all he said was, alpha male, jackhammer. Just don't do that. Also, if you're a fan of The Office, you definitely know the scene, so thank you. But really all to say, when a recruiter says, tell me a little bit about yourself, there is a wrong way to answer that. The right way is really simple. The right way is essentially a 3-part answer. You're introducing yourself and what you study. So for example, I would have been, I'm Emily and I'm studying human resources. Your next is what you're passionate about. So I'm Emily and I'm studying human resources and I'm really passionate about early career talent. And then the last sentence is why you're a fit for the job. So I'm Emily, I'm studying human resources. I'm really passionate about early career talent, and I'm the right fit for Intuit because I believe in your mission and I'm ready to drive change. Simple. That is it. All it is 3 powerful knockout sentences that say who you are, what you do, and why you're the right fit for the role. It's really as simple as that. The recruiter from there will probably ask you more questions as you go on, but keep it very simple and very clean up front with those. The next is the company. Obviously, I'm going to use Intuit as an example, but the next question every employer is going to ask is, why do you want to work here? And it's not good enough to say, oh, I saw your Super Bowl commercial last year and it was funny, or you guys sponsored, I don't know, this sporting event and that was cool. It's not enough. Do a Google search and call out the company culture. That's what's going to make you stand out in the interview. It's always going to be the company culture. So to say, I see that you have a value of giving back to the communities that you work in, that really resonates with me, and that's why I volunteer at XYZ. It's as simple as that. So make sure that you are doing that research and really finding something that connects you to that company beyond what I kind of call superficial examples, because they are great examples to see something that a brand does marketing wise and say like, okay, that's kind of cool, but you need to go a little bit deeper than that to make sure that you're connecting with who they are as an organization for any company that you're looking at. The next is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning. So being able to answer behavioral questions, or what I would call being armed with examples. Always, when I ask students questions, especially like leadership questions, behavioral questions, I'll either get like literally 7-minute long answers where I'm like, I now know all of your cousin's name, your birthplace, your favorite color is blue, I know way too much. Or they give me 1-word answers and I'm like, I have nothing, I need to ask follow-ups. The recipe for success for answering any question is the STAR method. Like, this is it. This is the holy grail. There is nothing better. I'm telling you right now, it is so good. If I could trademark it, I would. But the STAR method is really just a way to answer any kind of interview question in a way that gives just enough information while centering everything back to you, because the goal is for us to figure out how much you have actually done. So you'll start with your situation, then your task, then your action, and then the result. So I'm going to give you an example. So I would say, if I was the recruiter, me interviewing myself, I would say, tell me about a time where you worked on a really difficult team project. So I would start off with my situation. Well, I was in a computer science class and I had a project with 10 people. The next is the task. We were supposed to build a web scraper app. Next is the action. I was supposed to build this portion of the app, but my partner dropped out of the class a week before the assignment was due. So what was your action in response to that? So I decided to take on more work and researched her portion of the work, and we ended up getting an A. So you just go through literally each part, the situation, the task, the action, and the result, and you cannot mess it up. Especially when recruiters ask you about, a time you've faced a problem or a time you've had a difficult situation. You want to make sure that you end on a happy note. It's like a movie. Everyone wants a happy ending. So you have to tell the recruiter what you did to make the situation better. And if there was nothing that could be better, if it was just a bad situation, you guys flunked the project, or the product didn't launch, what did you learn from it? It's perfectly acceptable to say, we actually didn't do well in the project, but what I learned from that was XYZ. So you always want to have some kind of a positive outcome. A, because it shows that you learn and that you adapt, but B, it shows that you took time to actually prepare for the interview. So that's a huge, huge thing that recruiters love to see. Okay, that was literally me brain dumping for an hour. I am so sorry. I can pause just in case there are questions, because this was literally like fast facts, how to get a job. So I'd love to kind of pause there. I'll do a quick check of the chat. Oh my gosh, yes, Robert California did kill his interview. I could not agree more. I should have showed that clip. Huge. I love that there's office stands. So are there any questions in terms of literally anything, like resumes, LinkedIn, interviews, anything recruitment-wise that I can do to help?
Well, while people start putting questions in the chat, Emily, I want to tell you that that's literally the best brain dump I have ever seen. The fact that you're calling that a brain dump, that was great.
Thank you. I'm so glad it's helpful. Like 19-year-old me, she struggled, girl. So we all have to come together.
That's perfect.
Awesome. No, I'm so glad it was helpful. Amazing. We're getting some questions. So what types of things is it okay to kind of pull examples from? Do they all need to be school related? Oh, that's such a good question. I would say anything but your personal life is perfectly appropriate. Unless there is like a really unique circumstance. Like I've had someone who built an app for his grandmother's corner store, which is just like the sweetest thing in the world. That's a great example. Anything that is school or kind of work related is perfectly fine. My advice would be pick the most complicated situations. So, for example, if you were asked about a time that you've dealt with conflict and you had a difficult project or, a difficult experience with your retail job, I would pick the project just because it's a little bit more aligned to what they're asking for. But that's an awesome question. Any tips for managing nerves before interviews? Yes. Okay, so first of all, for someone who is a recruiter, when I tell you I nearly cried before my Intuit interview, I was so nervous. First of all, that feeling never goes away. The thing I would remind you of is that your recruiters are just people too. They are just normal, average people who have good days and bad days, and they are gonna feel all of the nerves that you feel before interviews too. I get nervous before most of my interviews, so that's a totally natural feeling. So accept that that's natural and that's normal, and that your recruiter knows you're going to be nervous, and that's completely okay. The next piece of advice you're gonna hate me for, but I very much believe in positive affirmations, and I very much believe in the superhero pose. So before all of my interviews, and I'm not even kidding you, I superhero pose in front of a mirror and I say nice things about myself. There's science behind that. I don't fully know it. It makes me feel better. So I would say just take time to hype yourself up, be your hype man, and just know that to be nervous is completely okay. You're supposed to be nervous. It's supposed to be a little bit scary, but your recruiter is there to kind of guide you through that. And I think a great call out too is if your recruiter isn't able to make you feel comfortable during an interview, is that really a company that you want to work for? You're allowed to be a little bit picky too with how they make you feel in that process as well. Awesome. Okay. How to know if they're interested. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm understanding this question right. So how to know basically if the recruiter is actually interested in the conversation during your interview. That's a really good question. I would say, okay, you're gonna also hate this answer. Probably you'll never know. I don't think a good recruiter would never say oh, this is boring, I think we're done, thank you. I think they'll always kind of have that conversation with you. Either way, recruiters generally, at least everyone I've interacted with, and most especially at Intuit, regardless of how the interview is going, we do our jobs because we just genuinely like talking to students. It's genuinely something that brings us joy. So regardless if you're a fit for the role or not a fit for the role, they're still enjoying that conversation and making that connection. So I would just say have that kind of in the back of your mind. Even if it's not a perfect fit for the role, your recruiter is still, a good recruiter is still genuinely enjoying talking to you. Any advice on follow-up and thank you emails? Oh, such a good question. These are really huge. I think they're great ideas. I would say the appropriate time to send them is, I would say 3 hours after your interview. If it's immediately after, your recruiter is so busy like typing up notes from your interview that they're not going to look at it and then it gets delayed. So wait like 3 or 4 hours after your interview to send the thank you email. Honestly, keep it simple. I always like calling out something that you learned in that conversation. So I would always send like, thank you so much for interviewing me today for this role. I really enjoyed our conversation. I particularly liked learning about, I don't know, why you chose to work at Intuit, or kind of some fun facts that you learned in that conversation, but that's an awesome question. What are some red flags in an interview, either from companies or from candidates? Whoa, such a good question. Okay, I'll tell you the company ones, because honestly, the candidate ones are, I would say, pretty job specific. Like mostly in an interview, if you're finding someone isn't matching up with the skills, that's usually kind of where these red flags come from. From a company, how a recruiter treats you in the process is very indicative of how that company is going to treat you. And that's not to say, you know, if they take a long time to respond, or if there's like harmless mistakes kind of a thing, like there's human error in all elements of recruitment. I would say if you have a recruiter who goes out of their way to kind of push really hard in your interviews and say, no, that's not right, and kind of make you feel small, pay attention to that stuff. You don't want to work at a company where that's the culture that's accepted. And COVID is also something I would recommend asking about in every single interview. How companies are responding and treating their employees during a global pandemic is really indicative of how they treat their employees overall. So I would say go out of your way to ask those questions. And I would also say, like, particularly in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, what is your company actively doing to do better? And if their answer is, we're looking into it, that's not good enough. Diversity is not just good for marginalized communities, it's good for everybody. So if that company isn't able to embrace that and doesn't have an action plan 6 months later, girl, bye. Cheers. So I would say ask those questions and be picky. Interviewing is like dating. I firmly believe this. They're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. So you should not be settling at all either. And that's my hype up conversation. And that's me hyping you. Okay, let me see if there's anything else that I've missed. What is some advice for someone whose resume doesn't fully meet the criteria in the application? Oh, my advice is ignore it. I've never been qualified for any job I've applied to and gotten. So just go for it. If the job application says 3 to 5 years, honey, it's 2. Just apply. The worst case scenario is you don't get the job. It's fine. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. And oftentimes, I would say Intuit, honestly, is very good about being realistic with what they're looking for. But we also do not put years of experience on our job descriptions because we don't think that that makes sense. So that's another kind of red flag. If the company is looking for, it's like those memes where they say like 10 to 15 years work experience for like $15 an hour. Those are also things to kind of pay attention to as well. But that's an awesome question. Any advice on cover letters and how important they are? Oh, they're not. So you can just ignore them. In tech, they don't matter. In business and finance, they're really important, but I don't think I've read a cover letter in a year and a half, so I think you'll be fine. Are there any differences in tips for phone interviews versus in-person interviews? Oh, that's such a good question. I would say what I've experienced over the last little bit is that students kind of get right to business. Like we kind of miss that small talk. Like when you meet someone in person, it's like, oh, how was your way in? Did you find it okay? You kind of have those conversations. I would say don't forget to be yourself. And if that's an extrovert, that's great. And if that's an introvert, that's great too. So I would say leave a little bit of time at the beginning when the recruiter says, how are you? To answer it like you're answering a friend. To say like, oh, you know what? My day's been really good. I ended up making this amazing breakfast. I'm in a great mood. How are you? So be authentic kind of with your responses. I would also say, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that so this is less so about how to perform on the interview, but what to ask on the interview. I would just go out of your way to ask more about what the company culture is like and what the office space is like as well, because this isn't going to last forever. And not being able to see your office space in person for a lot of people is really unfortunate. So I would just go out of your way to ask about like what the in-office culture was like and what the work from home culture is like right now as well. Awesome. We might have time for one more if there are any last minute questions or anything I can do to help. Awesome. Well, I think we're tapped out, but thank you guys so much. Seriously, like this is genuinely, I hope you can tell this is very genuine. I freaking love this. So thank you for having me. If you have any questions, anything I can do to help, hit me up on LinkedIn. Intuit is also hiring, shameless plug. We're hiring for co-op roles. I have some PM co-op roles. We also have some internship program roles that are going to be posted over the next couple of weeks as well. So all of those postings will be up over the next little while. But thank you guys so much. I'm so happy we were able to talk, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. I absolutely love this event. Like, this was extremely helpful I loved your honesty too. Like, it was amazing.
Thank you guys so much. It was my pleasure. Well, it was so good talking to you, and I'll talk to you again soon, I know.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. Thank you
Thank
so
you so much, Emily.
My pleasure. Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, I know there's a lot of excitement going on, but we just have a couple more announcements before we wrap up the meeting. Next week is our town hall. It's the perfect opportunity to come gather around and talk about what you love about Corey. Also, great opportunity to bring up things you'd love to improve about Corey. And then also it's a great time to come and chat about your classes, see how everything's going, see how everyone else is doing in this crazy online format. Yeah, so just make sure to stop by. That's next week, October 28th. And then, like always, we love your feedback. So make sure to either use the bit.ly link or the QR code to let us know what you thought of this event. If this was good, if you want to see more events like this, we love hearing your feedback. So I'm going to leave this up for a little bit. Feel free to chat, ask any questions. Also, a great way to connect with Emily is like if you put in our registration. If you haven't registered for the event already, just let me know and I can go back to that slide. We can send those emails over to Emily if you're interested. So, and then I think it was also in the chat, but I can resend it. Just resent it to the chat. So you can use that to register. That's a great way to connect with Emily. Also a great way to connect with Emily is on LinkedIn, if you're interested.